Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Good Tues News Day, the day where we cover all the good news we can find, well, our opinions of what good news is, and we have a variety of stories for you today. This is Before Coffee, the father and daughter comprehensive news of Planet Earth podcast, where we look up our news 10 to 15 minutes before we've begun, and we haven't drunk any caffeine. Doesn't mean you can't have any though, so get up a cup of coffee and let's look at these headlines. Today on Before Coffee, 5 deported Ukrainian children are returned to home, and a new study finds a relationship between different sugar sources and cardiovascular disease risk.
Electric car batteries last longer than you think.
Chimpanzees developing culture like humans? Groundbreaking study says yes.
Remember the vandalized sycamore tree from England? Well, they're cloning it. Plus, a bakery owner discovers her longtime customer is her long-lost son.
My father, the serial killer. How April Balicio put her dad behind bars and broke free of her childhood.
And it's National Dewey Decimal System, which I guarantee you most people have no idea what it is unless you took library science. On December 10th, 2024, on Before Coffee.
Libraries though are a great source of, you can also get audiobooks there. Right. You can get movies,
listen to music, watch old ancient TV shows, anything, man. And it's quiet.
Great. And you only have to pay a fee, just similar to Netflix. So, but I would say
you
it
don't have to
offers
pay
more than
anything
Netflix.
for library cards free.
Yeah, for some people,
you apply for it.
Depends if their state or current wherever they live supports their library with tax dollars or not.
Right.
Anyways, let's go to this quick story coming out of Ukraine. We've talked about, I think probably last year, how there was a huge revelation that a lot of Ukrainian children, especially those living in Crimea, were being exported, or I guess deported, to Russia, and then indoctrinated in some Russia school or something, so that they would think they're Russian for the next part of their life. And then it would be harder for Ukraine to get any sort of independence from Russia because all their children believe they're Russian. Anyways, but we have some news here of 5 Ukrainian children that were able to be deported back to Ukraine since Moscow took them away to be placed in their care. This is from Reuters. 5 Ukrainian children were sent away or placed in care since Moscow's February 2022 invasion returned to their homeland on Monday, so the 9th of December. Officials said part of a long-running campaign to bring home more than 20,000 deported children. Daria Zarvina, an advisor to the Ukrainian president, chiefs of staff, said those brought home on Monday, including 3 young people who in the course of their movement had reached the age of 18. Zarivna, writing on Telegram messaging app, said one girl had long sought to come home despite being subjected to Russian narratives of the war. Yeah, this is what I thought. They just took them all, put them in little schools, and said, hey, we're going to teach you what's really happening. This is the truth. Another boy who fled to Russia with his mother at the start of the war was reunited with his entire family. A third sought help to find his way out of Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine, while another family with 2 children endured searches and interrogations in their home before being taken to a safe area. These stories are just not facts, but real tales of fate and rescue thanks to the efforts of the state, volunteers, and our international partners, Zarina wrote. Ukraine's Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights, Dmytro Lubinets, told national television on the weekend that 1,029 children had been brought home since the outbreak of the war. That's so great to hear. 1,000 people have been saved from being indoctrinated. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, Russian Commissioner for Children's Rights, in connection with these deportations. Russia denies any allegations of deportation, saying children moved to areas outside combat zones and dismisses the arrest warrants as meaningless. The Gulf state of Qatar has acted as an intermediary in securing the return home of some of the children. Oh, that's so nice of Cater to do that. I don't know, that's just random, but hey, any help is nice, because you don't want to be like those sad children of, for example, Native American fame, who were indoctrinated, lost their culture, couldn't even speak their own language anymore, became fervent Christians. I wonder where Russia learned all their things from. Couldn't be the US and Canada, I don't think. Anyways, no one's guiltless. Study finds a divergent relationship between different sugar sources and cardiovascular disease risk. This is a story from medicalnews.net and also Frontiers. A little of what you fancy does you good, unless it's a fizzy drink. Scientists studying the impact of sugar on the risk of cardiovascular disease have found that eating too much added sugar increases the risk of stroke or aneurysm, but eating a few treats is associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Meanwhile, drinking sweetened beverages raises your risk of stroke, heart failure, and arterial fibrillation. Wow, that does not sound good. Most striking finding from our study is the divergent relationship between the different sources of added sugar and cardiovascular disease risk. Suzanne Janzi, PhD candidate at Lund University and corresponding author of the article in Frontiers in Public Health. This surprising contrast highlights the importance of considering not just the amount of sugar consumed, but its source and contents. A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, that's the saying. Although most public health bodies recommend limiting sugar consumption to protect your teeth and improve your diet, there has previously been limited evidence regarding the impact of sugar intake on cardiovascular diseases. These diseases are the leading cause of death and disease in Europe, and changing your diet is a comparatively easy way to reduce your risk. To understand how sugar consumption affects cardiovascular disease risk, and whether consuming different kinds of sugar changes those risks, the scientists collected data from two major cohort studies, the Swedish mammography cohort and the cohort of Swedish men. These studies have diet questionnaires administered in 1997 and 2009, allowing the scientists to monitor patients' diets over time. Once exclusions had been made to ensure two cohorts shared the same inclusion criteria and to remove independent risk factors from cardiovascular disease, probably something like, oh, this person smokes, so we're going to have to kick them out because we're only looking at diet. So if they're also a smoker or they're also doing something else that causes cardiovascular disease, they can't be put into the data set because that changes the findings. Scientists were left with a sample of 69,705 participants. That's pretty extensive. They looked at three classes of sugar consumption: toppings like honey, treats like pastry, or sweetened beverages like fizzy drinks, and 7 cardiovascular diseases: 2 different types of a stroke, heart attacks, heart failure, aortic aneurysms, and arterial fibrations, and aortic stenosis. I'm sure a doctor knows what all that means. Participants were monitored until they died, but let me look this up. I have no idea what arterial fibrillation is. It's kind of in the name, but let's look what that is. Is the abnormal heart rhythm characterized by rapid and irregular beating of the arterial chamber of the heart. It often begins as short periods of normal beating, which become longer or continuous over time. Okay, so your engine stops working properly. So it starts going in different rhythms. Aortic stenosis is the aortic valve disease, so the narrowing of the exit of the left ventricle of the heart. And so it just, blood can't pass through as easily and it's all inflated. And then finally, I think probably aortic aneurysms is probably the same. Your artery has aneurysms, which are also not good. Yeah, it's an enlargement of the aorta to greater than 1.5 the normal size. Typically, there's no symptoms, but it can cause ruptures. Yeah, nobody wants one of those. There we go. The participants were monitored until they died, were diagnosed with one of the cardiovascular diseases, or reached the end of the follow-up period in 2019. During this period, 25,739 participants were diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. That's a little under 1/3, but still too many, I think. The scientists then used the data to break down how different types of sugar intake affect the risk of different cardiovascular diseases. They found that consuming sweet drinks was way worse for your health than any other form of sugar. Drinking more sweetened drinks significantly increased the risk of ischemic stroke, heart failure, and arterial fibrillation, and abdominal aortic aneurysm. Oh no, your heart getting so big it goes into your abdomen? That's crazy. A new way of characterizing that's a ad. Different cardiovascular diseases were affected by by increased sugar intake, possibly because consuming additional sugar affected participants' individual risk profile differently. Increased sugar in general raised the risk of ischemic stroke and abdominal aortic aneurysm, as well as increasing the risk of heart failure in participants with a normal BMI. Alright, this is making me not want to have sugar ever again. I don't want a giant aneurysm in my abdominal area. Like, it's supposed to be here and it's all the way down in my stomach.
That's sounds extreme.
Yeah. However, the highest risks of negative health outcome arose in the lowest intake category for treats. Consuming occasional treats, probably like a cookie, associated with better outcomes than no treats at all. However, the scientist knows that more work will be needed to understand the mechanisms involved in the differential effects of different types of sugar consumption. They also pointed out that the diet is highly demographically and culturally specific. Yeah, I think there's a difference between eating like a digestive or a biscuit than, eating a freaking, I don't know, Turkish delight. That's going to be two different treats, Eating a bunch of superficial hard candy is probably not as good as eating something more naturally made like an apple tart. That's probably better for you. But so hopefully we'll do some more studies on the differences between consuming those different kind of sugar. But the basis is good news. If you have occasional slice of pie, you're not gonna die of a freaking aneurysm. But if you have too much fizzy drinks, or soda as they call it in the United States, you will probably get cardiovascular disease and get some sort of stroke or aneurysm or heart failure.
Probably. I don't know. I don't know if that makes it probable. Anyway,
like I said, it's
more than you're more likely than not.
The point is, don't drink fizzy drinks. I agree with this. I only have soda once a month at all. I don't think I drank any soda last month, actually, now I think about it. And my life is better for it, I would say. And I'm mostly talking to Neth. If Neth were watching Before Coffee, I'm specifically talking to him. Because he drinks coffee every day. Sorry, not coffee. Soda every day. Right. Sometimes 2 liters of soda every day. And even if it's sugar-free, I'm pretty sure it's still not good for you. But,
Yeah.
You can't change people with their...
Depends on what the sugar-free substitute is, right?
Yeah. I guess they need to go in another study to see if that sugar-free stuff, what that does. I'm sure there's studies about that as well. There we go.
I'm sure they do. They got stevia, they've got all that other stuff.
In most part, it's good news for people who, feel guilty about, eating your apple flap or whatever. You don't have to feel so bad. It's not as bad as drinking soda.
Okay. Yeah, you make me feel bad about drinking a soda now. Way to go. All right. Oh, well, we gotta die of something.
Yeah.
All right, there's a... Electric car news is from Wired.com. James Morris. There is an immense amount of consumer concern around the state of the battery that you buy in a secondhand vehicle, says James Wallace, co-founder of the Fortescue Battery Intelligence Division, Alesia. His company, formerly Williams Advanced Engineering, prior to the Fortescue acquisition, has been developing software to optimize battery performance in intensive use situations such as motorsport, including Formula E, mining, and for automaker JLR. Wallace is hoping for Alesia's technology will filter down to the mainstream to help give consumers more transparency on the secondhand batteries they buy. People base assumptions on existing experience. When it comes to battery longevity, that's most likely going to be their smartphones. Most of us see the battery life of our handsets start to drop after a couple of years. Apple's battery gate likely won't have helped with the popular image of the durability of lithium-ion cells either. But there's a growing indication that EV batteries are much sturdier than those in smartphones. Just for starters, you don't tend to recharge your EV every day like you do your handset. It might be as infrequently as once a week or less. Real-world studies show that how this affects electric cars' batteries.
Yeah.
Consulting firm P3 recently analyzed 7,000 fleet electric, not feet. Yeah, the Flintstones are driving them. Anyway, consulting firm P3 recently analyzed 7,000 fleet electric vehicles in partnership with the Austrian battery testing specialist Abilo. The report showed that average EV batteries have 90% capacity after 100,000 kilometers of driving, and at 300,000 kilometers, they still have 87% of their original kilowatts left. Similarly, data from the fleet telemetrics company Geotab has revealed that battery depletion is much lower than originally predicted over time. While the P3 research is based on vehicles between 3 and 5 years old, mapping remaining battery capacity against mileage, the Geotab analysis looks at age. We did a study in 2019, and then we did a more recent study as well, says Charlotte Argue. Her name is Argue. Her last name is actually Argue. But she gets in a lot of arguments. A senior management for sustainable mobility at Geotab. The most recent study was 11 different models and brands. Our 2019 study included 23 different models with multiple generations. In those reports, Geotab was tracking the state of the charge and measuring the energy flow of the vehicle in use, which was also the approach taken by P3 and Avilo. Using that, we can estimate at any given time what the total battery capacity is in the vehicle's life, says Argue. Plotted over time, we can start to look at trends of how battery capacity is changing. In most recent study, we looked at over 5,000 vehicles and many trips. Geotab said that the average degradation rate was just 1.8% per year. In Geotab's 2019 study, it was 2.3% per year. The most recent study didn't have as many early gen vehicles, said Argue, telling us that battery management systems are getting better and the batteries are lasting longer. If this 1.8 annual percent degradation continued in a linear fashion, after 10 years, the EV would still have 82% of its battery capacity. It's not quite how it's going to work, though. Much more than 70% of the most batteries are warranted for only the first. Much more than the 70% most batteries are warranted for after 8 years. So they have like an 8-year warranty, apparently. Dial that forward 20 years and the car would still have 64%. If a vehicle started off with 300 miles of WLTP rated range, the standard test vehicle used in Europe, it could have 192 miles of range 20 years later. That remains quite usable, and now there are lots of cars on the market that begin well over 300 miles of the WLTP range. We don't know how long EV batteries will last yet. Of course, there is still guesswork involved here because there are no 20-year-old mainstream EVs, and previous few even over 10 years. Precious few, sorry. Having trouble reading. Many of the latter Nissan Leafs, which lack the thermal management that keeps batteries in their best health, so they probably aren't the best guide for more modern EVs. But BMW i3 cars from a decade ago were reportedly faring well, with most still providing over 30% of their original capacity. BMW, which has conducted its own studies, confirmed to Wired that i3 batteries have lasted considerably longer than the company expected. Indeed, in 2023, BMW UK purchased the oldest i3 the company could find in its approved used network for testing. It was a 2013 BEV model fitted with a 22.6 kilowatt battery chosen purely on age. The car had 83% battery capacity after almost 10 years on the road. Tesla Model S vehicles from 2013 showed a similar capacity, according to Plug in America results reported by NimbleFins. Tesla even had a 2015 Model S in its UK press fleet with more than 250,000 miles on the clock on the same battery, with approximately 86% of its original capacity remaining. However, Argue advises caution. We can't predict the future. It's 1.8% per year to date. That's an argument that there could be what we call a heel curve towards the end of the life of the battery, where the battery starts degrading faster than it did for most of its life. Well, that's what batteries do. That's kind of what they do. We haven't observed enough bad vehicles hitting that heel to be able to predict and analyze when that will happen. All we can say right now is if it continues to degrade at the average rate we are seeing, these batteries should last 20 years or more.
That's so good news, yeah.
So there's your story. There's a lot more to it, but for brevity's sake, we're going to cut it short right there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great news to learn, because batteries have always been the big argument from, anti electric car people. Oh yeah, well the batteries take a lot of shit out of the environment, all those,
Okay.
And it's like, well, at least it lasts 20 years, which maybe you can't say the same thing for gasoline.
What? Gasoline cars will not necessarily go bad from age or use if you take care of them. I guess the argument is. But most people don't take care of their cars, me included. I neglect vehicle maintenance constantly. So
some environmental scientists would probably have to look into it, but I have a feeling that the environmental impact of taking lithium out of the ground may not be as bad as the environmental impact of not only harvesting oil, but turning it into gasoline and then using it in your car. I feel like that's still more of an environmental, well, depends if you're extracting that lithium with gas as well, right? If you're using
it's not just lithium,
gas
there's also rare earth metals
Yeah.
that go into a battery.
Yeah. So. Either way, still good news to know that the life of batteries could last up to 20 years. And also, I would like to say hello to Sarah from Australia again. I think you were here, last week? And welcome back to Before Coffee. And Almond, of course, welcome back to the stream. I didn't have my chats open, so I didn't see you guys chatting at me. But now I see you. See you now.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're having
Happy
a good
Tuesday.
morning. Or, I guess for Australia, a good evening in Australia. Right, let's go to our next story.
Yes.
It's definitely 12 hours ahead of you, or more actually. The whole day ahead of you. You're on the opposite side of where Australia is. Okay, let's talk about chimpanzees.
It's also summer there. So.
Yeah. This is on the SciTech Daily. I don't know if it's written by anyone, but it's on University. It's coming out of the University of Zurich. So the entire university wrote this article. Chimpanzees are renowned for their remarkable intelligence and ability to use tools, but could their cultures also evolve over time, similar to how human cultures evolved? A new multidisciplinary study led by University of Zurich suggests that some of the most advanced behaviors may have been passed down and refined through generations. Wow, when I made a joke that the University of Zurich did this study, but it actually was a bunch of different disciplines worked together to make this study. That's pretty cool. In recent decades, scientists have clearly demonstrated that chimpanzees, like humans, pass on complex cultures such as tool use from generation to generation. But human culture has become vastly more sophisticated. From the Stone Age to the Space Age, as new advances have been incorporated, chimpanzee cultures haven't changed in the same way, which suggests that only humans have the remarkable ability to build more sophisticated cultures over time. A bit human-centric, but okay. Scientists study chimpanzees in the wild. However, they have disputed this, suggesting that some chimpanzees' most complex technologies, in which they use multiple tools in a sequence to extract hidden food sources, were probably built on previous knowledge over time. As most chimpanzee tools, such as sticks and stems, are perishable, there are few records of their history to confirm this hypothesis, unlike human cases such as the evolution of the wheel or computer technology, says lead author Cassandra Gunasekaram from the Department of Evolutionary Anthropology at the University of Zurich. For the new study, a team of anthropologists, primologists, physicists, and geneticists from universities and research institutions in Zurich, St. Andrews, Barcelona, Cambridge, Constance, and Vienna joined forces to trace genetic links between chimpanzee populations over thousands of years, using new discoveries in genetics to uncover key pieces of chimpanzee cultural history in ways never before imagined. Authors collected information on markers of genetic similarity, genetic evidence of links between different groups of chimpanzees, as well as a range of foraging behaviors previously reported to be culturally learned. From a total of 35 chimpanzee studies across Africa, they grouped these behaviors into those that required no tools, those that required simple tools and such as using a leaf or a sponge to get water from a tree hole, and the most complex behaviors that relied on a tool set. A good old chimpanzee tool set. Stick, rock, and sponge.
Yeah.
Trading tool sets across generations is an example of such a tool set. The Congo region first used a strong stick to dig deep tunnels through hard soil to reach an underground termite nest, explains Gunasekaram. Next, they make a fishing probe by pulling a large plat system through their teeth to form a brush-like tip, pushing it into a point, and deftly threading it down the tunnel they'd made. They then pull it out and nibble off any defending termites they have been onto it. They literally are termite fishing. Amazing. They made the surprising discovery that it is the most complex chimpanzee technology that uses the entire tool set that are most strongly linked across now distant populations, says corresponding author Andrea Migliano, professor in evolution anthropology at UZH, University of Zurich. This is exactly what would be predicted if these more advanced technologies were readily invented and even less likely to be reinvented. Therefore, more likely they have been transmitted between groups. So what they're arguing here is because it's not just, grandfather chimpanzee teaches, father chimpanzee, and then father chimpanzee teaches daughter chimpanzee. What they're specifically talking about is chimpanzees from over there taught chimpanzees from over there how to do the thing with the stick, which is why they're so, surprised. Like, they're actually going to other tribes or groups and saying, yo, why are you getting termites like that? You could use my stick method here and you can get even more termites. You don't have to break open the bark and slam and, way more work trying to break open a tree than it is just to put a little stick down a hole and go, hey, delicious.
Yeah, you have more time. You have more time for your crossword puzzles now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Study shows. Wait, let me go back.
The chimpanzee news.
In chimpanzees, it is sexually maturing females rather than males who migrate to new communities to avoid inbreeding. In this way, genes are spread between neighboring groups and then further afield over the years, centuries, and millennia. The study authors discovered that it would be the same female migrations that could spread any new cultural advances to communities that lack them. See how I specifically said father teach daughter? Because daughter is leaving, so she's gonna go take it. I know about chimpanzees. Another proof that male dominance is not like a natural phenomenon like that. The study also showed that when both complex tool sets and their simpler versions, i.e. mostly the components of the toolset occur at different study sites, the genetic markers indicate that the sites were connected in the past by female migrations. This suggests that the complex versions were built communicatively by adding to or modifying the simple ones. The one female chimpanzee would be like, oh yeah, just use a stick, and then another would come in and say, oh yeah, you can also attach, something to coax them out, and you can, use this kind of stick instead, and then the stick technology just progressively improves and adds different steps as more chimpanzees and join to teach different ways to do things. These groundbreaking discoveries provide a new way to demonstrate that chimpanzees have a communicative culture, albeit at an early stage of development, Migliano adds. So, there you go. Good news. Chimpanzees are slowly catching up to humans. I think they have the chimpanzees and great apes. Or great apes. I think the great apes do have the highest chance of catching up to us. Because unfortunately, dogs, as much as we hang out with dogs, they just don't got the fingers for it, you know? They have to figure out their own tool set. Yeah. They can't be using our human tool set, so we're not spreading our culture to dogs.
Maybe raccoons.
Yeah, maybe raccoons. Raccoons are they're pretty
or
smart.
Squirrels or something. Somebody's got
human,
little hands. Somebody with little hands. Opposable thumbs.
But
Opposable
my story
thumbs, boys and girls. That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. To your story, I guess.
All right. Some more good news today. We have a bakery owner. Oh, by the way, I sent you a video.
Okay.
Bakery owner discovers her longtime customer is her biological son. This is from Andy Corbley of the Good News Network. From Chicago comes a story of a sweet reunion between a mother and a son who's, despite having met many times, never knew of their relationship. At Give Me Some Sugar, now we're talking about sugar again, but this is a good story about sugar. At Give Me Some Sugar Bakery, recently hired employee Hunter of Barnar is particularly proud of his pound cake. He had always loved stopping in for a sweet treat or breakfast at the cafe, particularly because of the service from the baker behind the counter. Her name was Lenore Lindsay, and though he didn't know Barmar's name, he knew him as a valuable customer. But the relationship went far deeper than that, though neither knew it. They were mother and son.
Wow.
Lindsay gave up her newborn son for adoption when she gave birth to Varmar at just 17 years old. Varmar, for his part, didn't know he was adopted until 34. After finding out, he gradually became interested in finding out who his birth mother was, and so submitted DNA for a test. One day, he received a strange call. I was on the phone talking to my friend when a call came through from the bakery, says Varmar to the Washington Post. It was like, why is Give Me Some Sugar with an H, sugar. Why is Give Me Some Sugar calling me? Even though he was told to expect a call from his biological mother, he didn't suspect even for a moment any connection between and the bakery. The Post heard from Lindsay, who said I guess this article was written in the Post, and this guy just gleaned it. Who said if she had seen Varmar's photo, the shock would have been immediate. Instead, with only a name, the call began with a slow awkwardness that eventually shattered with loud enthusiasm from the lost family members connected to dots. When I knew who he was, we just started screaming on the phone, Lindsay said. We were beside ourselves, with Hunter adding, it was just so unbelievable. When I called him, that connection was so immediate. I can't even explain it. It was just like everything in my heart just broke open, she said, this time to ABC Chicago. After a bout of health issues, Varmar even started working there while Lindsay recovered, having no prior baking experience. It's been a great experience. It further strengthens my faith. You can't make up for time in the days gone by. What you can do is properly utilize the time that you have. Along with Lindsay, Varmar got to meet his long-lost sister and an extended family member to boot, incorporating his own 4 children into a new network of sweet affection. So there's your good sugar story from today. Other good news, we reported on the Sycamore that was destroyed up in England, up by the Hadrian's Wall by a couple of knuckleheads. And today we're going to report the good news that not everybody in England is a knucklehead. This is from Positive.News, Robin Evanley. Congratulations, England. You do have good people. Fresh shoots grown from a felled sycamore gap tree are set to spread hope throughout the nation as the recipients are announced. A prison, a scout group, and a cricket club are among the new homes for dozens of saplings that have grown from the seeds of the iconic Sycamore Gap tree. The 200-year-old tree had become one of the most photographed in Britain and was beloved. It was a beloved feature of the Northumbrian landscape and at a dell on Hadrian's Wall. It was chopped down illegally in an act of vandalism in 23, provoking a global outcry of sadness and disbelief. Yeah, what an asshole would do that? The National Trust announced in September it would create a legacy for the tree by gifting 49 saplings, one for each foot of the sycamore's height, to communities around the UK. The charity received more than 500 applications for the saplings and announced the recipients on Friday. They included the Tree Amigos, a group of Coventry-based teenagers who set up a sanctuary to nurse trees damaged by vandalism back to health. The Tree Amigos. The special tree will be planted next year among the other lost trees in our care, serving as a beacon to inspire respect, understanding, and a sense of responsibility toward all trees, said the sanctuary's Martha Irwin. Leeds Teaching Hospital NHS Trust will also receive a sapling for its new Rob Morrow Center for Motor Neuron Disease, due to open in the summer of 25. Other recipients include a mining disaster commemoration group, a deaf and blind society, and Morton Hall Prison in Lincolnshire. The National Trust judging panel said it had been a privilege to read our applications for the saplings. Each and every application for a Tree of Hope told heartfelt stories of people's emotional connections to the sycamore gap tree and its importance of nature, said Andrew Poe, General Manager of the National Trust Hadrian Wall Properties. They spoke of loss, hope, and regeneration from all four corners of the UK. Did you know that the UK had corners? I didn't know that. They only have 4 of them, though. Only 4, not 5. It's a perfect square. Anyway.
Very funny.
Or a rectangle.
That joke of the week right there.
Maybe it's a parallelogram, but it only has 4 corners. Don't even look for that 5th one. Anyway, each sapling will carry a message of hope with it as they start a new chapter, not just for the tree, but all the 49 people and communities that will receive a sapling next year. Good people in England. There's your good news. All the good news we can squeeze into one segment. Back to you.
Sarah on chat says that you sound very Australian when you said sugar that way.
Sugar.
Oh.
That's the extent of my Australian right there.
Whoops, I went to the wrong thing. Okay, here we go.
I can't do accents in the morning. I can barely talk.
The mic drop moment you sent to me was not available in my country. So
I'll find a different one.
No, I found a different one already. And I also cut it down because the one I found was 5 minutes long.
Oh, okay.
A bit too long. I mean, we can watch the whole thing and we'll get copyright striked anyways.
As long as you get the good one.
I'll upload it to our YouTube channel and then I'll send you the link.
It's a movie clip, man.
Like the whole 5 minute clip.
Shouldn't be copyrighted. It's not the whole movie. It's like the movie's 3 hours long, man.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way, but YouTube, unfortunately, doesn't use human eyes. It uses robots, and robots don't care about our feelings.
Bastards. Stupid bastards.
All right, but I'll send you the link after this story. So let's go to my next story, which is about it's good news depending on your perspective. Like my perspective, I think it is good news, but this is a book. This is about a book about a woman who put her own dad behind bars because he was a serial killer. This is by Anna Moore on The Guardian. In 2009, while her husband and teenager slept, April Balicio was often wide awake in her home in Jefferson, Ohio, jotting down the small town she lived in and as a child and trying to match them to their month and year. It wasn't as easy as it might sound. Her father had driven them all over the U.S., Ohio, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, Colorado, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. In whatever vehicle they had at the time, an RV, a U-Haul truck, a camper, a school bus, they had set up home in farmhouses, mobile homes, tents, and barns. Sometimes Balicio completed a school year in one place, other times she didn't, because her father would wake them at night, tell them to pack up, and then off they'd go. No goodbyes, headed who knows where. During those nighttime online searches, Balicio would remember a place name, conjure a date in her mind, and then tap them into her search bar with the words such as cold case or murder. She had been doing this for about 18 months before she found something. Cold case, 1980, Watertown, Wisconsin. Hookers to so-called sweetheart murders of Kelly Drew and Timothy Hack, two 19-year-olds who had disappeared from a wedding reception at a venue called Concord House in August 1980. Did you hear about this? You lived in Wisconsin. You were alive in 1980.
What was it?
The sweetheart murders in Watertown, Wisconsin. No, never heard of it. Okay.
No, it may have passed through my brain, but I don't remember it specifically.
Either way, Balicio instantly remembered Concord House. Her father had worked there as a caretaker that summer. Although by the time the couple's body had been found 2 months later, Balicio and her family had moved hundreds of miles east to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 2007, however, the case had been reopened because of DNA evidence. There was a hotline for new leads. Balicio called in that night, barely expecting an answer, but a detective listened while she explained why Edward Wayne Edwards, her 75-year-old father, now living in Kentucky with his wife of more than 40 years, might be the man they were looking for. When I hung up, I just thought, "What did I just do?" says Balicio. Did I send that detective on a wild goose chase? I was doubting myself, berating myself. Was I a horrible person to think this about my dad? Well, as it turned out, she wasn't. Edwards was not only responsible for the Watertown murders, but confessed to 3 others and hinted there are many more. For some true crime conspiracy theorists, he is the U.S. most prolific serial killer, the man behind the country's most notorious unsolved crimes, from the 1960 Zodiac killings to the 1996 murder of Jean-Benet Ramsey in Colorado. Though Balicio believes none of this, she is firmly convinced that the number of her father's victims totals more than 5. Listeners of the 2019 true crime podcast The Clearing will remember some of Balicio's story. That has been set out in a far more detail in her book, Raised by a Serial Killer. It's a fascinating account of a childhood that had many things. Fun, wild, and free. Yeah, it must have been fun going to different places and meeting new people, traveling around the country. Little did she know, there was a dark and terrifying side to that whole story. Edwards was monstrous, but also did loving things. That's why most people consider serial killers to be psychopathic, because, yeah, they can, I love you, and I'm gonna go kill someone real quick. This was a dad excited by Christmas, but then he would find a sleigh. Sorry? You wanted to say something?
I said, mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I just saw you pick up your mic, so I thought you wanted to add something. This was a dad so excited by Christmas that he would fix a sleigh and a reindeer on the roof, transform whatever home they had into a wonderland, and wake his kids at night, because he couldn't wait until morning to watch them unwrap the presents he'd chosen so carefully. I wanted the readers to go on the same roller coaster that I was on, and have the same love-hate relationship with my dad that I had, said Balicio. The thing about Boogeyman, he was well liked. He was the life of the party. She believes this is partly why her father was able to get away with these crimes for as long as he did. Edwards had met Balicio's mother, Kay Lynn Ederly, in the late 60s on a city bus in Akron, Ohio. She was 21, he was 35. On parole from prison, he had a hard start. Born to an unwed mother, he had spent much of his childhood in an orphanage where he had been brutally treated. In adolescence, he had graduated from bike theft to car theft, then crisscrossed America with a number of women, sometimes working in sales, but always scamming, robbing, and eventually hitting the FBI's 10 most wanted list. By the time Edwards met Ederly, though, he claimed all of this was behind him. They married and had 5 children very quickly. Balicio was the oldest. While their dad found work wherever they were, invariably stealing from his bosses and devising dubious ways to make more than his wage. You know what? Good for him. I'll give him that. I'll give him that much. Stealing from your bosses and trying to make more money out of your wage sounds like a perfect counter to the wage theft that happens all over the United States for decades now. He was also a motivational speaker, giving public talks about his transformation. He wrote a book about it too, Metamorphosis of a Criminal, which he handed out to new neighbors as a kind of calling card. He wasn't the loner we often associate with serial killers. He was the son that his family revolved around. When Balicio, age 2, bit into an electric cord, relatable. Anybody else stick a key into a socket? No, just me? Rocked her on his lap and eventually bring her home and changing the bandage on her face each morning. Balicio says her dad was a cheerleader, coaching her in sport, officiating family games, driving her door to door to sell cookies so she could break state records in local fundraising initiatives. She recalls her siblings stealing sweets from a pharmacy. My dad marched them right back and made them apologize and do chores for the guy who owned it to make amends, she said. My dad probably stole from that same pharmacy, but he truly did not want us to grow up like he did. I actually look back on my childhood with fondness, she continues. This is probably a coping mechanism, but I try not to think about all the negative. Well, I mean, let's be honest here. People are multifaceted. So, yeah, there's good sides and bad sides to everyone. And I think for her sake, she should just accept that, you know, that her father was a serial killer, but he was also a good dad. It's possible to do two things at once.
Right.
I mean, there's a whole TV series about this, Dexter, right? It's about a serial killer that helps catch other serial killers. So, I mean, he was a good guy until the end, which I heard was terrible. The end of another show that messed up the end of the book, or end of the show. But the book describes multiple homes in enchanting places, neglected houses with stained glass windows, secret passages and spiral staircases on land covered in wild mint and fruit trees with chickens, dogs, and cats and ponies. Her dad always picked up an entourage, threw parties and barbecues and big celebrations. But inside the home, Balicio said, he was also violent, controlling and abusive, with a hair-trigger temper. She says her mother...
He was a sociopath.
Yeah, he was a sociopath.
All-rounded sociopath.
She says he broke her mother's jaw twice and also stabbed her, apparently because she'd finished all the crisps. No! Not the crisps!
No, not that.
That's terrible.
Crisps.
They might be sitting down at dinner one minute, then picking it up off the floor the next. Those magical houses that they lived in often had no heating or running water. And wherever they went, Balicio and her siblings were Edward's band of child laborers, up ladders, fixing the roof on their knees, scrubbing floors. More than once, he set fire to the places before moving on. It really ended well for the animals either. A dog hanged in the basement and a kitten hurled against a wall are just two grim examples. Well, I guess that's probably why she was like, was my dad a serial killer? He killed animals, and that's one of the stereotypes. You kill animals, and the next thing you do is start killing people. She moved out at 18, got a job, and never lived with her family again. She says it's more understanding for her mother now. She was very controlled, very abused, and in the 70s that didn't have programs for women that they do now. I'm sure she felt overwhelmed. She didn't have a job or a driver's license, she hadn't worked outside the home, and she had 5 children. What was she going to do, abandon them? But, it was finally after this fateful day where she talked to the detective that's like, oh my god, my father, that's not my father. I mean, it is, but he murdered people. Many people. And, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your opinion on the death sentence, Edwards did die of natural causes in prison in 2011, a few months before his execution date. So he didn't get executed, but he still died. Balicio says she feels lighter now. I feel like a burden has been lifted that I didn't even realize was there. Meeting the father of Timothy Hack was especially healing. David Hack came to my home with his wife Judy, and it was a nervous wreck, not knowing to expect. They sat on my sofa and I sat on the floor at their feet. They told me all about Tim, the sweet stories of him growing up, and it was devastating. If that had been one of my children? They wanted to know all about me and how I grew up. At the end, we hugged. We stayed in touch. They've helped me more than I helped them. Her book is dedicated to Dave and Judy Hack, which are the parents of one of his victims, her father's victims. Now, Balicio says the biggest thing she had to come up to terms with is how, like her father, she is in some ways. Growing up, I was always told you're just like your dad. And it's true, my dad had a bad temper, and so do I. But I also have a lot of his good and fun and characteristics. Yeah, hopefully she's not punching people in the jaw. I don't think she's doing that. Solving the puzzle of her childhood and making sense of those moonlight fits kept Balicio awake at night. I start investigating something and get consumed by it, she says. And then I hit dead ends and have to take a break. Never saw Edwards after turning him in, although he did send his autograph from prison, adding it would be worth something one day. Balicio binned it. Yeah, I don't need this. Fuck you, Dad. Still, she's now able to say that she loved him. For the longest time, I hated my dad, but I can also say that I did love him, and I'm thankful for the things he did show me. In choosing what I dwell on, I truly believe that he thought what he did best he could. I'll never make excuses for him. I know what he did, and I can talk about that, but he was, after all, my dad. So there's your story about somebody who took the courage that a lot of people really can't take the courage of, which is turning your family members in for being terrible, doing terrible things. April Balicio. And I guess you can read her story on having a serial killer dad, if you so care to read the story about it. I forgot where I read the book, name of the book somewhere. Usually they put it at the end of the article saying you can purchase the book at the local bookstore on Amazon or whatever. Can't seem to find.
So you don't. Okay, well,
Yeah, that's fine.
maybe you'll find it while I read or something.
Yeah, on to this day in history.
Okay, this day in history. Let's whip through this. Take the old glasses off.
WTF indeed.
Try to read.
Definitely a very WTF
This way.
thing.
Ah. Say what now?
Oh no, somebody in chat said WTF. I'm like, yeah, that whole story was quite WTF. I agree.
Yeah, no, I don't understand, man. 1041 in this day, Michael the Fifth Caliphates ascended to the throne of the Byzantine Empire following the death of Michael the Fourth. Clever names they came up in those days. 1508 on this day, Pope Julius II, the Holy Roman Empire Maximilian I, Louis XII of France, and Ferdinand II of Aragon formed the League of Cambrai. Yahoo!
Yeah, the
And
League.
all
What do they
put
do?
their swords
What
in
does
the air.
League do?
Did a happy dance. They made pies. I don't know. 1815 on this day, English mathematician Ada Lovelace was born, who was called the first computer programmer. I'd like to know the story behind that. Anyway, in 1851, American librarian Melville Dewey, who devised the Dewey Decimal classification for library cataloging and was largely responsible for the development of the library science in the United States, was born. So it's Dewey's birthday, born in 1851. 1884, American author Mark Twain's classic let's do that again. American author Mark Twain's classic novel Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was first published. Appearing in the United Kingdom and in Canada, it was released in the United States the following year. So happy anniversary to Huck Finn. In 1898, representatives of Spain and the United States signed the Treaty of Paris, concluding the Spanish-American War. And Spain basically hauled ass out of the Western Hemisphere for good. 1901. Excuse me. 1901, the first Nobel Prizes were distributed, marking the 5th anniversary of the death of the Swedish industrialist Alfred Nobel, who invented dynamite, who founded and endowed the awards through his will. And it's still going for all these years. He must have had lots of money, right?
Yeah.
1909, Swedish author Selma Lagerlöf, Swedish author Selma Lagerlöf became the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1909, cited for the lofty idealism, vivid imagination, and spirited perception that characterize her writings. In 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Very important. 1962, the British historical film Lawrence of Arabia, which was directed by David Lean and starred Peter O'Toole as T.E. Lawrence, had its world premiere and became one of the most celebrated epics in the history of cinema. Peter O'Toole. 1967, Otis Redding died in a plane crash in Madison, Wisconsin. He was one of the great soul artists of the 1960s. So a sad day. Otis Redding had a great voice. Died in a plane crash. Terrible. 1982, treaty codifying the law of the sea was signed by 117 countries. And the rest who didn't sign it, they're pirates, apparently. I don't know. 1996, South African President Nelson Mandela signed a new constitution that completed a transition from a long period of white minority rule, apartheid, to a full-fledged democracy. So happy anniversary to South Africa. You get to be a democracy in 1996 after pretending to be one for all them other years. 2005, American comedian Richard Pryor passed away at the age of 65. Richard Pryor revolutionized comedy's frank and controversial style. Yeah, there was only one Richard Pryor. Just crazy man. Crazy man on the stage. You never know what he was going to say. And he just went everywhere. He didn't care. There was no taboos for old Richard. 2006, Chilean General Augusto Pinochet, whose dictatorial reign in Chile was marked by the murder and torture of political prisoners and opponents, died while facing charges of human rights abuses. So he cheated the executioner. 2007, Argentine politician Cristina Fernandez Kirchner was sworn into office as Argentina's first female elected president. She succeeded her husband, Nestor Kirchner. Nestor. I like that name, Nestor. I know a couple guys named Nestor. And our featured event, 1768, Encyclopedia Britannica, which is the site I use for all this historical stuff, even though they have a fascination with serial killers that needs to be looked into. Encyclopedia Britannica's first encyclopedia was published on this day. That's right, in 1768. That's how long they've been doing this. The oldest continuously published and revised work in English language was published and advertised for sale in Edinburgh on this day in 1768. Featured biography: Emily Dickinson, American poet, born on December 10th, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. Happy birthday, Emily. She died May 15th at the age of 55 in 1886, and also in Amherst. Born there and died there. Hopefully she traveled more than just being in Amherst, Massachusetts her entire life. Probably wasn't. Other birthdays today: Ada Lovelace, British mathematician. Emily Dickinson, we covered. Oliver Messiaen, French composer, born in 1908. In 1960 is the birthday of Kenneth Branagh, British actor, director, and writer, famous Shakespearean actor, as I know him from Shakespeare type stuff.
As well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And Bobby Flay turns 60. American chef and restaurateur. Beat Bobby Flay. He's turning 60 today. Other days, what day is it today? It's National Lager Day. That's a beer for the uninitiated. So get out and drink that beer. And it's also the Dewey Decimal System Day. As we covered, it is Mr. Dewey's birthday. And he's the guy that came up with the system for cataloging libraries so you can easily find your book. So there's your dates for today. December 10th, 2024 on Before Lager. Hopefully long before Lager. Although if you're in Australia, it's about that time, right? It's about that time in Australia, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Back to you.
All right. This is also United Nations Human Rights Day on December 10th. Human Rights Day is observed annually around the world on December 10th. It commemorates the anniversary of one of the world's most groundbreaking global pledges, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yep, that pesky little thing
which I just mentioned.
Yeah, that pesky little thing that the EU, for example, is always saying, "Hey, you broke the human rights. We're gonna, you're on thin ice." And then they go, "No, I didn't. You made that up." The UN has declared it will claim for fighting in the General Assembly in Paris, fighting in 1948 even. This is how long they've been claiming for the universal human rights. Since 1948, and there's still plenty of people out there who try to get you. This includes being enshrined as a human being, regardless of your race, your color, your religion, your sex, your language, or politics. You're still a human being, and you're on Earth, and you have the rights to national, social origin, property, birth, and other things. So, celebrate human rights.
We're not all free until we're all free.
Yep.
That's right.
None of us are free until we're all free. 100%. Okay. And this has been Allison here from the Netherlands. Raj from the west coast of the US. Did you get my message? Can you click the link?
Yes, I did. I am ready.
The link is ready. Then I hope you guys have a good rest of your Tuesday because it is Good News Tuesday. So only do good things today. Spread the goodness around and have a good one. We will see you tomorrow for Whacking Weird Wednesday, where we cover the whacking weird news that's going on out there on the news cycle. So don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live and post a video. And comment down below what you would do with a, I don't know. Was there food? There was no food. I don't know.
A lager.
What your favorite Kenneth Branagh property is? Whether it's something he directed, something he starred in, a play he was in. There you go. Comment down that below. I never have any of the outro ready. And let's go to our mic drop moment. I started this at mostly just the huge speech here.
If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor.
This is, of course, a fake rendition of history made by Shakespeare, not an actual realistic thing that happened.
It's all about Kenneth Branagh's acting. He turned 64 today.
Let him depart. His passport shall be made.
I really like this shot here, because obviously I edited this to make it shorter, so I've already watched a little bit of it, but I really like this shot here of them walking through the woods.
Yep.
And I'm curious how many shots they had to do of that, right? Walking, doing the speech, all this like movement.
As the music gets louder and more adventurous, right? The soundtrack starts to liven itself.
And he does have that, what do you call it? He does have that
show his scars and say these wounds
theater voice here, even though this is a film.
Oh yeah, he's projecting across the field, right?
Yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in their mouths as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world. But we in it shall be remembered. We few.
That's emotion.
We happy few. We band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition.
His facial acting is good too, even though he doesn't need to, right? As a theater actor, nobody really sees your face. But for film, you do need to emote.
Whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day!
Yeah! For England!
My sovereign lord, bestow yourself with speed. The French are bravely in their battle set, and well,
kind of looks like Sam Gamgee
French
with that hair.
Samwise.
Yeah.
A man whose mind is backward now.
That does not wish more help from England, cause
At least they got Gandalf on their side, right?
Yeah.
You and I alone, without more help, can fight this royal battle.
The freaking smirk.
you know your places.
That is a Kenneth mark or whatever, his smirk.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.